Attention, everyone who's interested in objective science. Wrong Boys Mystery Company has a major announcement.
We have spent the past year looking through microscopes, looking through magnifying glasses, looking through telescopes to see what the world of politics is actually like when you look at it through these instruments. And we think we've discovered something.
It's long been asked by political scientists, what shape is politics? It's been theorized it's a line. It's been theorized it's a cube. It's even been theorized it's some sort of beyond comprehension megacube. But we did some deep digging, some deep philosophizing on this, and we've discovered something I think is world historic. It is the actual true shape of politics, the real shape of politics itself.
The moment's finally here. We're going to tell everyone what the shape is.
Not a square, not even a cube.
Politics is a triangular pyramid made up of tiny cubes. I know, seems obvious when you hear it. Oh, of course, that's what politics are shaped like.
I was expecting some sort of box shape, but when you think about politics, it's a triangular pyramid actually. And it's made of tiny little cubes. That explains so much. And the pyramid's made up of 5 quints, 5 sub-pyramids, and it fractally nests within itself. And the tiny cubes can be split into tiny octants, so it's got incredible explanatory power. I know, we actually considered not telling anyone, because we thought this idea would be too powerful, that it would give too much strength to our enemies. But we decided that it's right. It's right for everyone to know because it's the truth. It's objective science like physics.
It is facts, it is science. It is the actual shape of politics as it exists in the world, makes intuitive sense, triangular pyramid made up of tiny cubes. The world deserved to know, and we deserve to tell them.
Just desserts at last.
Thank you for listening to our announcement.
Aaron, are you ready to get triangular pyramid tiny cube pilled? Because this shit's real. It's not just a joke.
Yeah, I feel like we have to explain it better.
Let's try to start at first principles. Okay, first. It's a pyramid, right? But it's made of tiny cubes. You following me?
I feel like we should skip the cubes until we've fully described the pyramid.
No, you're totally right. You really got to see it to believe it. But okay, so here's the basic concept. A couple months ago, I was thinking about the shape of politics for like a day. I was like on not like a literal drug trip, but like a metaphorical, like it was my trip for the day. I was thinking about it, graphing stuff out, trying different things. And I was like thinking in 3D space.
You came up with a triangular pyramid. And so there's 3 points on the bottom and 1 on the top, 4 points total. If you think about a pyramid, you can imagine 3 smaller pyramids making up the bottom 3 corners, right? And then you could imagine a 4th pyramid sitting with its bottom 3 corners on the tips of those 3 pyramids to make the top. 4 of them kind of make up the shape of the pyramid, and then there's an inverted 5th one in the center. Are we explaining this well?
Thinking in 3D space, the 3D Triforce, if you're familiar with Triforce from Legend of Zelda, it's like a triangle with an inverted triangle in the middle. So what makes up that triangle is 4 triangles, including an inverted one. 3D version of that, we have 4 pyramids.
4 pyramids, but 5th being the upside down pyramid at the center.
Exactly.
5 sections to a triangular pyramid. A quadrant is when there's 4 sections to something. A quint is when there's 5, or a quintant, but we're calling it a quint.
Quint for short.
Those 4 pyramids that make up the main pyramid are the 4 main quints, and then there's like a centrist quint. But the 4 main quints all have labels.
Once you got this 3D object in your head, imagine each of these 4 corners represents something. One is hierarchism, the philosophical assumption of the betterness of some over others, and its peak of hierarchism, its ultimate form, is something akin to slavery, Nazism, etc. Another peak, marketism. The concept of markets mediating people's lives, the peak of that, again, being pure markets, a 100% market society. State only exists to facilitate the market. All things are dealt with through the market. Maybe you'd call that an extreme form of anarcho-capitalism or neoliberalism or something like that. The next quint, centralism, is the peak of centralism would be something like a efficiently organized, technocratic, centralized society. You can think of that as like maybe a meritocracy or technocracy as being the peak of that. The final peak is communalism, which you could also maybe paraphrase as communism, something similar to that, sharing with people, irreducible minimum, all the great things that come out of a perfect utopian society that we love so much.
So one thing about triangular pyramids that you might know is that all four peaks or corners are equally far apart from each other. On this chart, the peak of centralism and the peak of marketism are equally as far away as the peak of centralism and the peak of hierarchism. They're all opposites of each other in a sense. This allows you to make four things all opposed to one another. Moving towards the peak of any one of these things means you move further away from the peaks of all the others.
For example, the more communalist you are, the less hierarchical, centralist, and marketist you are. The more marketist you are, the less hierarchist, communalist, and centralist you are. They always exist in a tension with the opposite three. One of the things that I just really enjoy about this is how, by the implications of its shape, it produces different discourses related to the way these ideas relate to each other. So each of these 5 pyramids that make up this bigger pyramid, you can then have 5 smaller pyramids in each of them, so it can be recursive.
Like within the communalist corner of the pyramid, there is a smaller fractal version of the same pyramid within that. So you have the peak of communalism is that same corner again, and that would be like where the smaller super communalism is. But within the communalist pyramid, there would be the hierarchism peak. So that's the corner of communalism that is closest to the ideology of hierarchism, would be one quint of the communalism quint, like a quint within a quint. And there would be also for marketism and centralism as well. Like within any one quint, you can be closer or further away to any of the other quints.
It is a little bit more complex than answering a bunch of like yes and no questions in an HTML and stuff, but it's also pretty straightforward. So there's hierarchism, marketism, communalism, and centralism. These are the 4 corresponding values to this. What one is primary to you? What is the root of your ideology, the focus of your ideology? Is it more of like a technocratic aim, a communist aim, a hierarchical aim, like a stratification aim, or a market aim? That's going to determine what quint you're in. Then ask the question again. So I've picked my major. What's my minor? I'm a communalist with a minor in marketism. That's like where a mutualist would be. A mutualist who's oriented in social needs. Someone who wants to use markets to alleviate social problems would be in the marketism sub-quint of the communalism quint. And then you can go a step further by doing the same process again. And then through that recursive process down, you can find sort of a specific spot in 3D space that you could be. And you could also see where people are in relation to you.
I think it would be a lot more intuitive if there was maybe a virtual reality 3D space you could enter, but at least like a 3D modeling program that asked you questions and placed you. It's hard to describe over voice, and even 2-dimensional drawings of it kind of fall flat. But I imagine if there was a 3D model, it would really pop.
I mean, I hope you've been able to construct a 3D model in your head with us during this part. If not, I'm really sorry for every moment it took up describing.
And I'm also sorry for what's to come, because we've been talking about the triangular pyramids, but of course, they're made up of tiny cubes.
Made up of tiny cubes. Who could forget?
So once you found your point in 3D space inside the triangular pyramid, on that point, it's another chart. One way to think about this is if you were to imagine left-right axis as it normally is, and on that left-right axis, if you were to place another horizontal axis, maybe you could make them perpendicular just so you could see it, but it's like you're placing one axis over another axis. In this one, we're taking this triangular pyramid axis and we're inserting a cubed axis over it. I know it's confusing, but
if it helps, you can think of this as 3 sliders and not a cube.
Yeah, your point in the triangular pyramid could just be made up of 3 more sliders, but I like the cube.
Thinking of a tiny little cube inside my triangular pyramid, that's what I like about it. So I can't give that up personally, but to each their own. So these tiny little cubes, they're made up of 3 more dichotomies, 3 more
spectra,
tensions where you can place yourself on it. You know, there's science versus mysticism, process versus blueprints, and propertarian versus usufructian. So based on where you fit on those spectrums, you're going to find yourself in one of the subcubes, of which there are a total of 8. For example, I find myself in the subcube of usufructian scientific process.
Usufructian, I'm for that, but on the other 2, I'm a bit more centrist. I believe process and blueprints are interrelated and they shouldn't necessarily be dichotomized in this way. And science versus mysticism, depending what you mean by those things. Some people by mysticism just mean like believing whatever you want. And some people have some weird things they believe about. So I don't know.
You know what? I'll confess, I, to the very end, had trouble picking what those three things would be that would make up the cubes.
You just knew there needed to be a cube because that's the shape.
I knew it was the right shape. Yeah, we found the shape for sure. But the actual labels, I think even the labels in the original pyramid, I'm willing to take a scalpel to that. It's just important to me that people know the shape.
I haven't found any faults with the pyramid, but the cubes I'm not so sure about. But I would say I'm a process blueprint centrist, usufructian, and I'm going to have to lean science if I have to pick.
What I really did there in the cubes is I sort of put my own will to power in it by shaping it to my own designs to force people to realize that they want to be usufructian and not proprietarian, for example, or to start conversations about how blueprints are insufficient in themselves and that it actually needs to be a process. And I mean, the science versus mysticism one just felt easy. I don't really actually feel that passionate about it, but yeah, so basically what we've done here is we've created a very hard to understand political compass that's only purpose is to distinguish people who agree with me from people who don't.
Who's this usufructian blueprint science hierarchist in the communalist quadrant of hierarchy? Like, maybe someone's there. I'm not saying no one's there, but what I'm saying is that person doesn't think I believe in hierarchism, but with a communalist bent, and I'm really into... I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying it's right, but I'm saying it's most right for people who agree with us. Those are the people who are going to be like, oh yeah, if I can wrap my head around this needlessly complicated thing, it makes so much sense.
I hope one day this will slap for me. Something I like about this too, with the quint and subquint system, when you're thinking about these nested triangular prisms, there's something really satisfying about that. It feels more organic to the world. It feels like then, say, like a point from 0 to 10 or something versus another point to 0 to 10 or something. But the idea of a political chart that's based on a nested system of recurrence at different scales, like this fractal,
right?
That determining your position on this thing is a matter of fractally pushing down through the same shape until you get to your final point, which would take like 5 or 6 questions or 5 or 6 short surveys.
The thing I really liked about the pyramid shape is that it's one of the only political charts I've seen that didn't rely on just multiple dichotomies. Like even the 7-axis one we did or the 5-axis one we did, it's just a whole bunch of two...
This versus this.
A whole bunch of spectras comparing one thing to one other thing. But with the pyramid, if you can find 4 things you're willing to say all oppose each other, you can set up 4 variables that are all opposed like that. It's like you can't break down that pyramid just into hierarchism versus as like... It's saying they're all interrelated to each other in a way. Like if we had done the left values one in a way where it inherently tied party versus union to ecological versus product. I don't know why you would want to, but I've never seen a political map attempt to do that before. But that's how the real world actually is. It's not a whole bunch of like A to B spectras where people follow along these lines. It's like sometimes there's like 4 different things opposing each other in a space.
Shaping it that way really, I want to say that it escapes the spectrum problem, but it doesn't quite.
Like it makes it more unassailable because it's vaguer. Does that make sense? Like saying these 2 things are opposed and the closer you move to one, the further you are from the other. It's easy to poke holes in that, but moving towards one moves you away from 3 other things. It's just harder to hold that in your head and like think of the reasons why it's wrong.
Yeah, and then we haven't even gotten the cubes yet. So I look forward to all the principled and pragmatic critiques, ideas for relabeling of the quints.
Absolutely.
Or alternative shapes that might be useful for the development of political understanding.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I find it significantly lacking in certain ways, but no, I'm just being modest. I think it's objectively true, like science or physics.
2 hours later.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Wrong Boys Correction Time. Now, we know that on the political chart of correctness, you usually expect to see the wrong boys firmly over on the correct side. But sometimes on some charts, the boys are charted as incorrect. And this is one of those instances. We're going to have a little humility and issue an important correction.
Okay, so on that last segment, after we finished recording, we pulled out the pens and science instruments again. And
we were just talking about how hard it is to hold all these concepts in your head and how we were worried we might not have been able to convey some of the nuances of the objectively true way to look at politics. And we realized that all this time, when we had imagined a three-dimensional Triforce, we thought that an upside-down triangular pyramid in the middle would be the natural shape there. But unfortunately, we were thinking of rectangular pyramids. That would hold up. But this did not hold up. Actually, we found after quite a bit of sketching, brain wrinkles, there's some frustration from both of us at how hard it was to conceive of the differing pieces of information we were receiving. It's an octahedron, folks.
That's 8 faces. They're all triangles. They're all the same size. This doesn't change too many things. There's still 5 quints, and the 4 corner quints are still shaped like pyramids, just like we said, but the central quint for centrism is shaped like an octahedron. So we didn't talk about the centrist quint very much anyway, so it's not that big. It's a tetrahedron. That's the shape of the overall pyramid thing, the triangular pyramid we call it. It's a tetrahedron, and an octahedron is in the center. It's just what happens. Sometimes science updates itself when you learn new things.
Yeah, I think that's just more proof that we're in the scientific process space. We're able to update our priors, admit we were wrong, admit we had egg in our face, and frankly admit hadn't thought that much about the middle part for like months. So egg on our face, we're sorry.
Yeah.
Hopefully it helps us all visualize shapes a little better in the future.
I know it did for me, absolutely.
Oh yeah, my shape imagination has been
expanded,
stretched out.
That was another Wrong Boys correction moment, the part of the show where we issue a correction for something we just said that we realized we didn't understand well enough the first time. And that's when you issue a correction. Thank you.